It's crazy to think that Michael Jackson and Amy Winehouse spent their whole lives as undiagnosed autistics and nobody even noticed. They were completely failed, so no wonder their lives ended in tragedy. Well, at least that's what the internet is saying. With the upcoming Michael Jackson biopic and the 15-year anniversary of Amy Winehouse's death, I've seen a lot of discourse online talking about whether Amy Winehouse, Michael Jackson, even people like Princess Diana were in fact autistic. And I am not here today, just to clarify, to debate those things and work out whether they were in fact undiagnosed autistics, but to talk more about whether it's ever okay to armchair diagnose people, especially celebrities that we don't know, or worse still, those celebrities that have actually now passed away. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ellie. I was diagnosed as autistic at the age of 25 just over 2 years ago, and everything I talk about on this channel is related to autism along with my own experiences. So if you're not subscribed already, then definitely make sure that you do. But I myself recently got back from holiday, and on the plane back I was watching the Back to Black film, which I've never actually seen before. And if you were autistic too, then you might relate to getting hyper focused on things, and that's definitely been me recently, where I've been hyper fixated on everything Amy Winehouse, her life, her story, especially because I was only 13 when she died, so there's so much information that I did not know about her. But I saw on Reddit a post talking about whether people actually thought that she could be autistic. They noticed things like her not making eye contact in interviews, or even her struggles with alcohol and drug abuse, intense emotions and struggles with relationships. But this is something I've really struggled with from an ethical point of view, because yes, other late diagnosed autistics may relate to certain traits that Amy Winehouse had, but at the end of the day, she isn't somebody who's here anymore. She cannot control that narrative, and as far as we know, she never got an autism diagnosis in life. So it does feel like a controversial subject to talk about, especially because of her life, of course, ended in tragedy. And I think turning 28 the other day made me realise this even more, because when you're younger and you hear the age 27 feels like you've got your life all together and you were so grown up and mature. But now, actually being older than she was when she died, the tragedy of it all of a sudden has hit me like it never did in the past. And maybe it's people's way of trying to stop something bad that has already happened. And yes, there are certain parts of Amy's story that I myself see similarities in, like struggling with alcohol. Definitely not to the extent that Amy Winehouse struggled, but prior to getting diagnosed, I went completely teetotal because I had a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol, particularly when I was a teenager, where I would use alcohol as a social crutch to cope with social situations. I'm not saying for a minute that that's why Amy Winehouse drank alcohol. She obviously had a lot of her own struggles, but just trying to see it in other people's perspectives of why somebody would compare their situation as a late diagnosed autistic with Amy Winehouse. I kind of understand people's perspectives, but on the other hand, again, she's not able to control that narrative or that perspective, and Amy Winehouse's story is not going to change now. 15 years later, 4 people armchair diagnosing her as autistic. I've also seen similar with people like Michael Jackson, where everybody says that he was childlike, he communicated better with children than he did with adults, and he potentially showed a lot of autistic traits, especially with his obsession and love for music. But this is not something that we can actually prove or disprove at this point, because we can't actually interview these people or actually diagnose them. It just creates another puzzle piece in their story, which is never actually going to be solved. I've even seen people talking about Princess Diana and the fact that they think that she too could be autistic after reading her book and her displaying supposedly some traits. Again, I don't want this to be misconstrued or misinterpreted as me trying to analyse whether they're autistic, because that's definitely not the case. But I guess I'm just trying to understand this. If you're autistic too, you'll probably relate to trying to understand and interpret things from talking. I'm such a verbal processor, and I don't always have people to talk to about these subjects, so it definitely helps to be able to talk about the things that are on my mind and that I'm trying to analyse to other people on the internet. So I would really love to know your guys' opinions if you are watching this video on what you think about this. It's not just people that have passed away that I've seen subjects like this talked about as well. I also see this too for living celebrities, which sits with me a little bit better because obviously they are people that can still control somewhat the narrative surrounding their lives, and they can still have their voice heard in a way that people that have passed away can't. But I see videos all the time on TikTok of people suggesting that Taylor Swift could be autistic, or Winona Ryder, or Kristen Stewart. And again, it just kind of sits weird with me because these people have never publicly said that they were autistic and never publicly displayed all the traits of autism, because at the end of the day, they are not people that we actually know. We know the brand of Taylor Swift or Kristen Stewart or whoever it is. We do not actually know them individuals. We've never had a conversation with them. We don't know what their day-to-day life looks like. So how can we possibly actually determine from watching them through the lens of a camera or through social media whether they are in fact autistic or not? And it also begs the question of, can you really tell from the outside whether somebody is autistic or not anyway? When I was going through my own autism journey, I know that so many people were questioning me and saying, why would you even think you're autistic? You're so obviously not autistic. But they all came from the fact that I was in fact high masking, and I'd learned from years of masking and learning social interactions how to communicate in a way that made me seem neurotypical, albeit subconsciously, because again, I did not know I was autistic until I was 25. But if you can't tell from the outside that some people are in fact autistic because they present in a neurotypical way, can you actually do the same in reverse because somebody presents in an autistic way? Because yes, we might relate their behaviours to autism because we are autistic, but I always say this on my channel, but autistic traits are human traits. We aren't aliens. So different people may experience certain autistic traits without ever being autistic because they don't fit the full diagnostic criteria for autism. So how do we ever expect to actually go through that whole full diagnostic criteria and understand whether other people are autistic or not just from experiencing them from the outside? I don't even know whether this is all making sense, so please let me know in the comments if what I'm saying is resonating with anybody, because this is just a topic I've wanted to talk about for a long time. If you are also starting your own autism journeys, I have got some resources linked below, but I don't want that to be the primary focus of this video. I just want to talk more about the relationship between people, especially I think between people that are late diagnosed and also then armchair diagnosing other people who do present some autistic traits, again, human traits. Don't get me wrong, I do also see this from the other perspective as well though, where people that are later diagnosed maybe do feel lonely, maybe do want to have somebody that they can relate to who could in fact also be autistic, because they might not know many autistic people in their real lives and want to be able to relate their autism to somebody else. I know for me, until I started talking about my own struggles on social media, I didn't have anybody in my real life who I could relate to and who understood my struggles as a late diagnosed autistic, and it can feel very, very lonely. But I just don't necessarily think that the place to relate your autistic traits to other people is to celebrities, whether living or dead, especially if they have not been diagnosed formally themselves. At the end of the day, that is just guessing, and you're not actually going to gain anything from that situation by relating your autistic traits to somebody who may or may not even be autistic. I think where I can draw the line with this though is when it comes to autistic coded characters in TV shows and in films. There are so many characters that I watch where I think, oh, they're probably autistic, like Hermione Granger or Matilda or even Phoebe off Friends, and even Katniss Everdeen. I can completely see myself in them characters and think, yeah, they, in my head, are definitely autistic. But I think the difference is that with those autistic coded characters, they are just that, they are characters, and essentially they exist within a certain piece of text or in a certain film or in a certain TV show, and their universe basically ends there. So you can kind of expand on that universe in your head or try and make understanding from that piece of literature or from that film. And I've done a whole video as well, guys, talking about just that. So definitely go and watch my video about autistic coded characters. I definitely want to do a part 2 to that because that video is almost 2 years ago now. But autistic coded characters are something I can definitely get on board with. And I think because people are on the internet kind of saying, oh, is such and such autistic? Is Wednesday Addams autistic? Is Lisa Simpson autistic? People then take them questions but place them onto real life people. And I think that's where the issue comes in, because I genuinely think that as a society we need to draw a line between characters and people. Yes, Taylor Swift or Amy Winehouse or Princess Diana may feel like characters to you because you only ever see them exist on these forms of media where we see these fictional characters too. They are, or were still, real life people with real life feelings and emotions and families, and they are so much deeper than just a character on a page or on the screen. I suppose every situation does have nuance, which is what I'm trying to consider in this video, because some people may actually relate hugely to some of these people, but I think we just need to be careful when we are sharing this information online and saying, oh, Amy Winehouse or Princess Diana or whoever it is was definitely autistic, because you cannot say for definite that that is true. In the same way that you cannot say for definite that any one person is autistic because they display certain autistic traits. I also do want to clarify that this argument is not parallel with self-diagnosis. I've seen people say online, oh, if you can't diagnose celebrities, then you shouldn't be able to diagnose yourself either. Armchair diagnosis is the same no matter whether it's about